Prince Harry secretly does DNA test for his children with Meghan Markle, and what the results shows is not he expected to see. Welcome viewers to my channel. Please subscribe, like my video, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next update. The morning after the envelope arrived, the sun rose slowly over the California hills, casting a golden hue across the garden. The air was still deceptively peaceful, as if nature was unaware of the storm brewing inside the man sitting quietly on the back porch. Harry had hardly slept. He had stared at the ceiling for hours, his mind replaying the words on that paper over and over again. Each line felt heavier than the last. He had expected reassurance. He had expected relief. Instead, he was left with confusion and a gnawing ache that words could not soothe. He wanted to destroy the paper, to pretend it never existed, but something stopped him. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was guilt. Or maybe it was the quiet voice of his mother echoing in his memory, reminding him that hiding from the truth never ends well. He folded the page, placed it back in the envelope, and tucked it away in a drawer he had locked, out of sight, but never out of mind. That day, as Meghan moved gracefully through their home, smiling, laughing, speaking with their children, Harry felt both love and distance. Every time she spoke, he felt the weight of what he now carried pressing harder on his chest. The children's laughter, once the purest sound he knew, now pierced him with uncertainty. He tried to smile, but even his smiles felt counterfeit. It wasn't that he didn't love them. He did more than his own life. But something inside him had changed. The world around him looked the same, yet nothing felt real anymore. He started questioning moments he once held sacred. The first time he held his son, the day their daughter was born. The way Meghan's eyes filled with tears when she told him she was pregnant. He began to replay those memories, searching for signs that weren't there. Every look, every word, every pause in a conversation seemed to carry new meaning. Harry had been raised to distrust emotion. In the royal family, feelings were carefully managed, not expressed. Vulnerability was seen as weakness. Honesty is recklessness. His mother's life had taught him that truth, once revealed, could destroy everything. Yet, she had also shown him that suppression only feeds suffering. He was torn between the two worlds that had shaped him, the cold discipline of the palace and the raw, unfiltered humanity his mother embodied. As the days passed, he began to notice small changes in himself. He became distant, distracted, often lost in thought. Meghan noticed, of course. She would ask if something was wrong, and he'd force a smile, saying he was just tired or overwhelmed with work. But inside, he was unraveling. Every moment of silence felt like a conversation he wasn't ready to have. Every smile she offered felt like a test of how long he could keep pretending. One evening, as they sat by the fire after the children had gone to bed, Meghan leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. "You've been quiet lately," she said softly. "Is everything okay?" Harry hesitated. He wanted to tell her everything, to unburden himself, to share the truth, but the words wouldn't come. "I'm fine," he said instead, staring at the flames. "Just a lot on my mind." She looked at him for a long time, searching his face for answers. "You know you can talk to me," she said, "about anything." "I know," he replied, but he didn't, not this, not now. Maybe not ever. That night, as she slept beside him, he lay awake again. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that the real doubt didn't start with the envelope. It started long before, years earlier, back in England, when everything began to fall apart. The seeds had been planted then by whispers, by headlines, by people who thrived on division. It was during the final months before they left the royal family. The tension had been unbearable. Meghan had been accused of things that made no sense, being controlling, manipulative, even deceitful. Harry had defended her fiercely, but deep down the pressure had left its mark. The palace environment was toxic, filled with hidden agendas and unspoken resentment. Every smile in public hid bitterness in private. And through it all, the media had one goal: to make Harry doubt everything. There were articles that claimed Meghan was too secretive about her family, that she wasn't transparent about certain aspects of her past. Others suggested that Harry was being manipulated, that he had lost himself under her influence. Most of it was cruel fiction, but when you hear something often enough, even lies start to sound like possibilities. Then came the cruelest rumor of all, one that touched on the very heart of identity. It began as an anonymous post on a gossip site, then spread like wildfire through tabloids and online forums. It suggested that certain features of their firstborn didn't resemble the royal line. It was absurd, baseless, and invasive. Harry dismissed it immediately, but he never forgot it. At first, he told himself that no sane person would believe such filth, but when acquaintances, even friends, began making quiet jokes or asking loaded questions, something in him shifted. He told them off, of course, but the damage was done. Doubt had entered the room. Meghan, too, had noticed the way the narrative was changing. She was hurt, frustrated, and angry at the press for attacking their family so viciously. Harry had promised her that their love would withstand anything. He believed it then, but promises are only as strong as the faith behind them, and faith can crumble under enough pressure. When they moved to California, Harry thought they had escaped the poison of that world. For a while, things were peaceful. They built a life far from the cameras, surrounded by nature and quiet. But even peace can't silence what's already inside you. The mind remembers, the fears resurface, and no amount of sunshine can wash away suspicion once it's taken root. It began subtly. Harry started comparing his children's mannerisms to his own, their features to those of his family. It wasn't intentional. It was instinctive. Every resemblance comforted him. Every difference, no matter how small, made him think. And once those thoughts began, they refused to leave. He started having vivid dreams. In one, he saw himself back in the palace, surrounded by his family, each of them staring at him with cold, knowing eyes. He would reach for his children, but they'd drift away into darkness, unreachable. He'd wake up in a sweat, heart pounding, his mind clouded with guilt. He knew he was betraying the very people he loved most. Yet he couldn't stop himself from wondering. In those moments, Harry would recall the lessons of his childhood, the constant lies, the hidden affairs, the endless deceit that the monarchy had buried for generations. Secrets were currency in that world. Every royal carried at least one, was it possible? He thought that he had become part of that same legacy without even realizing it. One afternoon, he visited a friend in Los Angeles, someone who had been through a very public divorce years earlier. They sat in a quiet garden away from the noise of the city. Harry didn't reveal the truth, but he hinted at his turmoil. His friend listened, then said something that struck him deeply. "The hardest part about doubt isn't what it says about others," the man said. "It's what it says about you. Because if you doubt someone you love, it means you've already lost a part of yourself." Those words stayed with him. That night, as he sat in the dark watching Meghan read to their children, he wondered if he had already crossed that invisible line, the point where doubt becomes destruction. He wanted to believe that love could conquer anything, but experience had taught him otherwise. Love without trust is just longing dressed in hope. As the weeks went on, Harry began to feel trapped in his own silence. He couldn't talk to Meghan, couldn't talk to the media, and certainly couldn't talk to his family back in the UK. The few conversations he did have with his father were formal, stiff, almost lifeless. There was no room for vulnerability there. William, too, was distant. The brothers' relationship had fractured beyond easy repair. Harry knew that if word ever got out that he had taken such a test, it would be weaponized instantly, not just against him, but against Meghan and the children. Still, the question lingered in his mind like a haunting melody. What if the rumors were true? What if everything he had sacrificed for love had been built on illusion? It was an unbearable thought, one that made him both angry and terrified. He wanted to prove everyone wrong, to prove himself wrong. But in trying to find peace, he had opened a door that might never close. And so the seeds of doubt continued to grow, watered by secrecy and fear. They took root in his heart, spreading quietly, invisibly, until they became impossible to ignore. Harry would look at his family and feel two opposing forces pulling him apart: the love that made him whole, and the suspicion that threatened to destroy him. By the time he finally acted on it, the decision didn't feel sudden at all. It felt inevitable, like the final step in a path he had been walking for years without realizing. The moment he mailed that envelope, he thought he was seeking peace. But what he didn't know was that the truth, once awakened, never goes back to sleep. The days that followed felt heavy, as though time itself had slowed. The air inside the Montecito home was thick with silence, and Harry felt it pressing down on him every time he tried to breathe. There were moments when laughter echoed through the hallways, his children playing, Meghan's soft voice guiding them, but those sounds only deepened his loneliness. He was surrounded by love, yet completely alone in his thoughts. Isolation, he realized, didn't always come from being far away from people. It came from being unable to tell anyone what was truly haunting you. For years, Harry had carried that same kind of loneliness. It began long before California, before his marriage, before the war between his family and the tabloids. It began in the corridors of palaces where emotions were seen as liabilities. From his earliest memories, he had been taught to hide pain behind politeness, to endure without speaking. The royal family's unspoken rule was simple: never explain, never complain. But how could you live honestly when you were forbidden to be human? When he left the United Kingdom, Harry believed that distance would bring him peace. He thought California's open skies and ocean breeze would wash away the ghosts of his past. Yet, the further he went from the monarchy, the closer those ghosts seemed to follow. He was no longer a prince of the realm, but he was still a man shaped by the cold machinery of the institution. The habits of silence, the fear of scandal, the instinct to protect the family's image, those things didn't vanish overnight. They lived in him even as he tried to build a new life on the other side of the world. The press still followed him. The headlines didn't stop. In fact, they multiplied, dissecting his every move, twisting his words, mocking his choices. Some days he ignored them. Other days he couldn't look away. There were mornings when he'd scroll through articles, his chest tightening as he read strangers debating his integrity, his fatherhood, his marriage. He hated himself for caring, but deep down he knew why it hurt, because doubt was already there, and every cruel word fed it. He started spending more time alone. Meghan noticed but didn't press him at first. She had learned that when Harry retreated into silence, it usually meant he was wrestling with something deep. He would take long walks through the garden, sometimes disappearing for hours, staring out toward the horizon. On those walks, he would think about everything: the choices he made, the people he'd left behind, the cost of freedom. There were nights when he'd sit on the patio with a glass of whiskey, watching the stars. He'd remember the nights in Afghanistan, the desert sky stretching endlessly above him, and how clear his purpose had felt back then. Serving gave him identity, clarity, structure. But now in civilian life, far from the duties and chaos of the royal world, he felt disoriented. For the first time in his life, there was no clear mission, no sense of belonging. He missed the structure, even as he hated the system it represented. It was a contradiction that tore at him. He had escaped the palace to find freedom, but freedom came with something no one had warned him about: emptiness. Without the constant schedule, the briefings, the events, the cameras waiting outside the gate, there was only silence. And in that silence, the mind starts talking. That's when the voices of doubt grew louder. He would tell himself it was all nonsense, that he was overthinking, but the thought never stayed buried. It kept returning like a shadow, subtle at first, then suffocating. He'd watch his son's face, his smile, his curious eyes, and for a split second, he'd feel an ache that words couldn't describe. He hated himself for it, but he couldn't stop. It wasn't that he believed the worst. It was that he was terrified of not knowing. One evening, he tried to distract himself by calling an old friend from the army. They spoke for nearly an hour about everything except what was really bothering him. When his friend asked how California was treating him, Harry laughed, but it sounded hollow. "It's quiet," he said, "almost too quiet." The friend chuckled. "You always hated quiet, mate. You were the one who could sleep through artillery fire, but couldn't stand silence." Harry smiled weakly. It was true. Silence left too much room for thought. And right now, his thoughts were the last thing he wanted to face. The longer he kept the truth to himself, the more isolated he became. He began avoiding Megan's gaze, afraid she would see through him. When she touched his hand, he'd feel a rush of guilt so intense it made him flinch. He tried to overcompensate, being extra affectionate, extra attentive, but it only deepened the distance. Authenticity had always been their bond, but now he was performing love to hide fear. He thought about calling his therapist, the one who had helped him process his mother's death years earlier. But how could he explain this? How could he admit that he had done something so drastic, so invasive, to the woman he claimed to trust more than anyone? The shame was suffocating. The walls of the house began to feel smaller. Every corner reminded him of something he didn't want to remember. The laughter of his children, once his greatest joy, became a painful reminder of the secret he now carried. He tried working out, meditating, reading, anything to distract his mind, but nothing helped. The more he tried to suppress it, the stronger it grew. One afternoon, while Megan took the children to visit friends, Harry stayed behind. The silence of the house was deafening. He walked into his study, opened the drawer, and took out the envelope again. His hands shook as he unfolded the paper. He read it once more, even though he already knew every word by heart. It was supposed to bring clarity, but instead it brought chaos. There were results that made sense, others that didn't. The phrasing was clinical, detached, numbers, probabilities, comparisons. But to him, each number felt like a judgment. He sat there for a long time, staring at the page until his eyes blurred. For the first time, he allowed himself to cry, not the silent tears of royal composure, but the raw, uncontrolled sobs of a man breaking apart. He wept for his mother, for the family he had lost, for the love he was now afraid of losing. When Megan returned later, he had already composed himself. He smiled, helped with dinner, read bedtime stories, and kissed his children good night. But inside, something had shifted permanently. The house felt colder, even though the fireplace burned bright. He could hear the laughter of his wife and children, but it felt distant, like an echo from another life. That night, he dreamed again. He was walking through the corridors of Buckingham Palace, but the walls were closing in. Portraits of past monarchs stared down at him, their eyes cold, their faces disapproving. He tried to open a door, but it wouldn't budge. He turned around and saw his family standing at the other end of the hallway. Megan, the children reaching out to him, but between them and him was a chasm that kept widening. No matter how fast he ran, he couldn't reach them. He woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. Megan stirred beside him, murmuring softly, but he pretended to be asleep. He turned away, staring into the darkness. The dream felt more real than anything he had experienced in weeks. In the following days, Harry began to withdraw further from the outside world. He canceled interviews, avoided friends, and stopped responding to messages. When Megan asked if he wanted to attend an event together, He declined, saying he needed rest. But rest was the last thing he could find. The isolation had become a prison. Every thought circled back to the same question, the same torment. He started wondering if his life had simply repeated his mother's tragedy in another form. Diana had lived surrounded by people, yet utterly alone. She had been silenced by those closest to her. Now Harry was doing it to himself. He had inherited not just her sensitivity, but her burden. There was a moment one evening when he sat outside watching the sunset when a realization struck him so hard it felt physical. He had spent his entire life running from the shadows of the monarchy, but in doing so he had built a different kind of prison, one made of love, secrecy, and fear. He had thought freedom meant escape, but true freedom he now understood required honesty, and honesty was what terrified him most. He wondered what his mother would have said if she were alive. He could almost hear her voice, calm yet firm, telling him that truth has a price, but lies cost more. He thought of her courage, her vulnerability, her pain, and realized that he was standing at the same crossroads she once faced. But unlike her, he had something to lose that she didn't: a wife who trusted him and children who depended on him. Telling Meghan the truth could destroy that trust forever. Keeping it could destroy him. The weight of that choice became his constant companion. Every morning he woke up and saw her smile. Every night he watched her sleep peacefully beside him. He felt the distance between them widen. He wanted to bridge it, but the bridge was made of glass. One wrong move and everything would shatter. And so he remained silent. Days turned into weeks. The loneliness became unbearable, but he learned to wear it like armor. He spoke when he needed to, smiled when expected, and performed the role of the devoted husband and father flawlessly. To outsiders, nothing had changed, but inside Harry had begun to drift away, pulled into the quiet gravity of his own doubt. He often thought back to that envelope, and the moment he opened it, he realized now that what terrified him most wasn't the content of the paper. It was what it revealed about himself, that even after all he had endured, all he had fought for, he was still a man searching for certainty in a world that offered none. In the end, the isolation was no longer just physical or emotional. It became spiritual, a distance from everything he believed in. And in that isolation, one question echoed louder than all the rest. If truth is meant to set you free,